So the big news today is that we just launched our new Kickstarter to convert Dungeons of Drakkenheim to Daggerheart in association with our lovely friends at Ghostfire Gaming and Darrington Press. We wanted to do a little video series that shows a little bit of what that actually looks like on the player side by converting the heroes of the original Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign into Daggerheart.
We're going to be using Demiplane for this conversion. It has the official Daggerheart character builder, and honestly, it makes the process incredibly easy. It was actually surprising how little work it took to pull the character together.
Yeah, so today we're going to be taking Kelly's character from our Drakkenheim actual play series, Sebastian Crowe, the half-elf shadow sorcerer, and seeing what he looks like reimagined through Daggerheart's mechanics.
Small disclaimer before we dive in. Yes, we are going to be partnering with Darrington Press and Demiplane for the Kickstarter, but for this video, we were not sponsored by Darrington Press or Demiplane. We're just genuinely excited about the system. We've been having a blast designing with its mechanics, and we wanted to show you what it's like to build a character from the ground up.
So if you don't want to check out the Kickstarter, the links are right down in the description below. With that, let's get rolling. So let's just set some expectations. Daggerheart and D&D are both fantasy role-playing games, so it's easy to compare them directly in a lot of ways. But even though they share a lot of similar terms like classes and abilities and hit points, Daggerheart builds characters in a pretty different way. So if you want us to see how Daggerheart breaks down as a system and our reactions to it, we did a whole video on that you can check out right up over here.
The goal here isn't to recreate my D&D character stat for stat, it's to capture the essence of Sebastian Crowe. We wanted to take a look at his personality, the flavor of his powers, the mood he brought to the table. And if we hold on to that core, Daggerheart's mechanics are going to give us new ways to express who he is.
So that's actually a really good question. So when we look at bringing a character to a new system, I think it's really important to actually ask that question. Who actually is Sebastian Crowe? What is the essence of his character separated from the mechanics? Because that's going to guide all the choices that we make with the actual rules of Daggerheart themselves.
So Sebastian Crowe is a half-elf shadow sorcerer. That's what he was in D&D. He's a little bit overconfident, accident-prone, and usually prone to making a lot of mistakes and setting things on fire. His magic, I always described it as the sort of essence of shadow and fire. He wore a long brown duster jacket. He carried a staff or a wand. He had a pair of goggles that was relatively iconic for his character. He was a very chaotic person, often stressed out, emotionally reactive, and he had a habit of causing a lot of incidents as he was growing up.
If I recall correctly, a lot of your inspiration for Sebastian Crowe were characters like Constantine from the DC comics. I think a little bit of Harry Dresden was thrown in there. Other inspirations that you had for him as a character?
I mean, loosely, I was looking at like Gambit as one of my favorite X-Men, Doctor Who, the 10th Doctor a little bit, but I kind of lost that pretty early on.
And you played him very emotional, very reactive, very in the moment, but constantly stressed and pushing himself way too far.
Yeah, he eventually learned to control his magic, but he always did it the hard way, which was usually meant through failures, accidents, regrets. He has a lot of trauma in his past, and that's kind of also what gives him his drive, though. So he wants to prove he can make things right, even if it ends up ruining him in the end.
Yeah, and I think that this is why Sebastian, as we'll see, he turns out to be a really great fit for Daggerheart, because I think the system captures a lot of this in its mechanics with the fear, hope, and stress that gives every die roll that you make with him, actually it's going to feel like that story comes to the fore.
Yeah, so when we're redesigning him, the core that we want to hold on to is chaos, shadow, fire. We want him to feel like raw, instinctual, and sort of capture the vibes of just this raw magical might that he tries his best to control.
So as we dive into the build, just like in D&D, characters in Daggerheart have a class. And in Daggerheart, each class is built around 2 domains, which are shared decks of powers that characters can draw on. Now, we do have things in Daggerheart like warriors and rogues and wizards, and druids and things like this. But fortunately, we don't have to go far in Daggerheart because there is also a sorcerer.
So I'm going to pull up the Demiplane character builder here. Sebastian is going to be staying a sorcerer. We're not going to change that. So we are going to select the sorcerer class. As a sorcerer, his domains are Arcana and Midnight. Arcana is all about raw instinctual magic, tapping into the chaotic forces of the world to shape energy and elements through sheer willpower. Midnight, on the other hand, is the domain of shadow and secrecy, the art of concealment, mystery, and discovery. I would say I'm surprised at how much this captures the vibe
It's
of
very on
Sebastian.
brand.
Yeah.
Very on brand, actually.
So yeah, Arcana and Midnight are perfect here. Really, like Sebastian is a guy who's driven by volatile power, darkness, and he's always searching for what lies beneath the surface. So I think we get that just by choosing the Sorcerer.
So your core class is going to give you your starting evasion, define your hit points, a class item that you begin with, and a few core class features that you have to start things off with, like your illusion power. But you also get a hope feature. So characters in Daggerheart accumulate hope points, and every class has a feature that they can trigger by spending 3 hope.
So for sorcerers, I gain volatile magic. I can spend 3 hope to re-roll my magic damage die. This is chaotic and dangerous.
That's
like Sebastian.
Yeah, I think it's very perfect. Every subclass also has 3 features that represent your growth through the campaign. So you get these foundation features depending on your subclass. So which subclass are you going to choose? Primal or elemental?
I think Primal makes sense. It grants the sort of spell casting and manipulate magic feature, and the manipulate magic feature is similar to the meta magic feature that I had, and
Yeah.
I use that a lot. So I think I want to stay true to that and get the manipulate magic feature. So Primal Origin feels right.
Yes. So that's going to let you mark stress to extend the reach of your spells, gain a +2 bonus to the roll, double a damage die of your choice, or hit extra targets. That actually does feel a lot like meta magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sebastian loves being able to shape his spells, and also he's marking stress to increase his power. That's a theme that we're going to try to tap into here.
Yeah. So next up is your heritage, which replaces D&D's idea of a species or a lineage. And this actually has 2 parts in Daggerheart, your ancestry and your community, which in total give you about 3 extra little features for your character.
Sebastian's a half-elf, so we'll actually use Daggerheart's mixed ancestry rule, which is right here up at the top. That means we can combine features from 2 different lineages, one human, one elf, to represent both sides of his heritage.
Yeah, mechanically, you pick one of each ancestry has 2 features, and you basically pick the first one from one and the second one from the other. And those become your defining traits.
So from the elf side, we'll take quick reactions. Sebastian can now mark stress to gain advantage on a reaction roll. I think it's hilarious that we're just building up ways that he can gain stress to do things. And that also continues with the human side, where we're going to take adaptability so that when he fails a roll using one of his experiences, he can mark stress to re-roll.
I think this is actually hilarious.
So far as his volatile magic and his two heritage traits.
Poor Sebastian's just always stressed out. Oh, but he's always pushing himself to be better.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is like really the price that Sebastian pays.
Yeah.
For pushing himself too far.
He's a guy that just wants to improve, and it stresses him out in the process.
So what community did you choose?
So for the community, based on some talks that we've had about the setting of Drakkenheim and all of that, I'm going with Loreborn. Loreborn is primarily geared towards, being knowledgeable in history, culture, politics of prominent people or places. For the setting of Drakkenheim, what we're kind of going with here is that if you are academy trained, you're likely moving towards Loreborn. So for him, this has to do with the studies that he did manage to complete while he was in school.
All right, so let's flip back in Demiplane and set our traits. So these are the ability scores of Daggerheart. There are 6 of them: agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. So when you do an action roll in Daggerheart, the GM decides which of the traits is the relevant one to govern what you're doing. You roll your duality dice, add them together, add together whichever trait you're using, and then determine which of them came up higher, the hope die or the fear die. And so in this case, I would have rolled a 12 with hope. So how are you doing your stats?
So I'm kind of going with suggested traits. I think that they actually suit us just fine. Instinct is the sorcerer's main spellcasting stat. So what I've done is I've given a +2 to instinct, and then a +1 to presence and a +1 to finesse. Knowledge and agility stay at 0, and strength is a -1. Now, you might be saying, well, Sebastian Crowe was never very good with his instincts, but for me, instinct doesn't necessarily mean I have good instincts. I think that Sebastian Crowe, we can all agree, is a very instinctual person. He acts.
I would maybe use the word impulsive.
Yeah, but his instincts, he trusts his instincts, wrongfully, to push his magic. He'll act before he thinks. And he thinks very little, so it's the instincts in the moment that drive him.
I do think that Sebastian was a very much like in the moment making decisions person, and obviously presence is kind of the equivalent to charisma in Daggerheart, and instinct is kind of feels like the wisdom equivalent, but things are a little bit different in the system broadly enough that I think that this still captures the essence of this character really, really well.
Yeah, as we push Sebastian Crowe further, we're going to focus on instinct and presence as his two core abilities, because I think, without calling it wisdom, I think instinct, we can justify Sebastian being instinctual and having a lot of presence.
Yeah. So then the next step when you're actually building a Daggerheart character is to record some core stats. Unfortunately for us, Demiplane does a lot of this work because it's going to derive our evasion, our hit points, and our starting hope and how that all stacks out. Evasion is pretty much like your armor class or your defense score. It's how hard it is to hit you. For a sorcerer, that's just 10.
Then we have hit points, which measure the actual physical injuries Sebastian can endure. But instead of rolling damage dice and that equating to how much damage your character takes, Daggerheart uses something called damage thresholds. Each attack is compared against your thresholds. You can either have minor, major, or severe, and you mark 1, 2, or 3 hit points depending on how bad the hit is.
Yeah, so this kind of prevents characters and monsters from getting one-shot really badly in Daggerheart. It's kind of one of the nice combat balance features to it, where you still get to roll a fistful of dice for your damage, but then that translates into 1, 2, or 3 actual hit points lost.
And naturally, there's also the stress mechanic, which we're going to be using a lot for Sebastian, which just kind of adds this extra weight to the choices that you make. You can mark stress to power certain abilities, like my subclass feature, or when you push yourself past your limits, like the multiple features that I have here. If your stress fills up, you become vulnerable until you can rest. I think Sebastian is generally a pretty stressed and vulnerable guy.
Yeah, and there's environment features and adversaries can, like, a lot of things can cause your character to gain stress over play. The GM has abilities that can do that to you. And of course, when your stress fills up, any future stress becomes hit point damage.
Yeah.
So I really like it. I just love that it is a meter that characters track, because for me, as someone that likes horror systems, it's having stress and fear. Love it.
I do like that for Sebastian, he can really dig into his stress to adapt to a situation and push his power. And not only will he be burning his enemies, but he will be burning himself out as he does it.
Yeah. And then hope and fear tied all together. So hope is what your character spends to fuel their best moments. You gain a hope die whenever your duality dice, the hope one, is the higher of the two, whether you succeed or fail, right? And then the DM gains fear when the fear die comes out on top of every single one of your die rolls. The GM uses the fear for kind of intruding on the scene or triggering environmental or adversary effects.
Yeah, so a lot of things to keep track of, but it's actually pretty seamless at the table. Most of your abilities tell you exactly what you're spending or using or gaining. And having played it now a few times, it's actually pretty fluid.
Yeah, so next up, equipment. There's not a huge list of shopping for Daggerheart. There's really just picking your primary and secondary weapons and your armor. Everything else is kind of just assumed that you've got the usual adventuring gear.
So for Sebastian, I went with the dual staff. I want to give him a staff to start. And I actually thought the hand runes sounded pretty cool for him channeling raw magic through his hands. So I get 2 choices. The dual staff will be my primary weapon. The hand runes will be my secondary.
Yeah, not bad. And because this gives you kind of like a melee and ranged option. And I like that the weapons in Daggerheart basically fulfill the role of like your cantrips or your basic magic attacks. You're channeling magic through your staff or your hand runes, and you're still doing a magic damage thing, but this means that the system doesn't need to like have a billion different cantrips for spellcasters to have basic attacks.
So the dual staff's going to be for all my range damage. It uses instinct. It has a far range, and it does d6 plus 3 magic damage. It's 2-handed. Whereas the hand runes are also going to use instinct, but it's very close. So this is only if I'm up close and personal. It does D10 magic damage, and it's one-handed. So we have a little bit of versatility there.
What are you doing for armor?
When we move on to armor, Sebastian isn't a soldier here. He's not heavily armored, so he's going to be wearing the Gambeson armor, which is really just kind of robes, or in this case, I'm imagining that it's his cool jacket that he's always had. It's going to give me a base score of 3, and my thresholds are going to be 5 and 11. And it does give me the flexibility feature, which is +1 to my evasion. So now my evasion instead of 10 is going to be 11. So, not bad.
Yeah, and this armor gives you basically 3 armor points. So when you do take damage, you can then spend an armor point to reduce that damage by 1 when you spend that armor point. Some classes get a lot of different ways to manipulate armor and more ways to use armor. Not sorcerers.
No, I'm a squishy boy.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you get a couple other essentials for your kit. You're going to take a health potion, and then you're going to have what kind of item?
Yeah, so the options here are Whispering Orb or a family heirloom. I think I'm going to go with the family heirloom, and that's got to be his goggles, which were given to him by his father. They're iconic for him, so why don't we use those as his special item?
Yeah, and so then in Daggerheart, the character creation process actually asks us to start thinking about our background for our character here, to really start focusing your character. And they ask you some really cool questions about your character's story.
I love that these questions already hit the exact beats of Sebastian's story from Drakkenheim. They're excellent questions to help flesh out your backstory. They line up perfectly with who he is, his mistakes, his mentor, the guilt that drives him. I had a lot of other hooks when I was designing Sebastian Crowe, but I just want to say, regardless of the system, this gives us 3 good questions to answer, but talking to your DM about your character goes a long way.
So, first of all, I think this is a great question for Sebastian. What did Sebastian do that made people in his community wary of him?
I think that, I mean, when he was a kid, he started a bunch of fires, caused a bunch of incidents as a kid. Yeah, his power always came out in bursts that he couldn't control, and he spent most of his childhood being like ridiculed and shunned by his community. So yeah, that's what happened there.
Did you have a mentor that taught you to control your magic, and why don't they guide you anymore?
So Eldrick Runeweaver took me under his wing as a student when I joined the Amethyst Academy, and he tried his best to help me out at controlling my magic. Eventually, I made a horrible mistake that caused me to be expelled, which is why he can no longer be my mentor.
And then finally, the third question is, you have a deep fear that you hide from everyone. What is it, and why does it scare you?
Um, my deep fear that I hide from everybody is actually the mistake that I made. I'm terrified of it coming out because I'm afraid of the consequences, what people would think of me, and also the fact that it could come back to bite me in the butt someday. That secret is that during school, I tried to cast a spell that was way above my level, and I summoned a demon that dragged an innocent girl to hell, and that's how I got expelled. A lot of legal stuff happened there that made it so that I was only expelled. But yeah, I'm terrified of the consequences of that action coming back, and I don't tell anybody about it.
So, building on this, once you have the background questions, your character in Daggerheart also creates experiences. If you're coming from other RPG systems, you might be used to having like a list of skills that you select whether or not your character is proficient in that or not. But in Daggerheart, this is much more open-ended and personal. You don't choose like things like Arcana or Persuasion. You come up with a short phrase that describes what your character's actually experienced in doing that you can then invoke when you're making dice rolls in the future.
They're sort of this free-form expression of who your character is, which I really like. You want to pick something that's going to come up in play. You get to start with 2 experiences, and each one has a +2 modifier. Whenever an experience clearly applies to what you're doing, you can spend 1 hope to invoke it and add that +2 bonus to your roll.
Yeah, and you do get to add that to your trait. So technically speaking, Sebastian could make an instinct roll that also keyed on an experience and get a +4 bonus in total.
So for Sebastian, I went with 2 that feel very true to his story, but that also I felt were gameable. The first one is Academy Dropout or Expelled Academy Mage, which for me, that kind of covers two bases. It covers his actual magical training that he got in school, but also the chip on his shoulder that he might have from being kicked out. So it can help whenever he draws on formal magical knowledge, or when he's trying to prove that he still deserves to be a renowned mage.
This gives you something that you can apply to a whole wide range of action rolls.
Yeah, and for the second one, I had to go with his iconic catchphrase, "What's the worst that could happen?" which sums up his sort of overconfident attitude and him getting into trouble, but occasionally saving the day. I can see me invoking this whenever I go headfirst into combat.
Yeah, I just love the ability to have a catchphrase as one of your experiences, and this one just embodies the chaos and impulsivity of Sebastian Crowe. So now let's get into something really exciting. This is some real, like, mechanical meat. This is actually choosing the domain cards. These are Daggerheart's versions of spells and class features. Instead of memorizing a spell list, every character in Daggerheart builds basically a hand of abilities that represent their unique powers. And the core set actually comes with cards for these, which are really great references. Each domain has about there's 2 powers per level per domain. Except for first level domains that have the first levels, which have 3 of each. So that means that there's basically 42 powers that you have to choose from that you're going to be able to pick, like, I think 10 over your. So you really do have to get selective.
But also that means that the versatility on character creation is very wide open. 2 sorcerers could be completely different. I might lean entirely into Arcana or entirely into Midnight or mix a bit of both. And really, even if somebody else was playing a sorcerer, they might choose entirely different abilities to bring forth what they believe their character to be.
So you get 2 to start. There are 6 first level powers that you can choose from Arcana and Midnight. What 2 did you pick?
So looking at the options that I have at first level, I am going to go with the 2 that I feel speak to who Sebastian is as a character. First, we're going to go fully with the theme and vibes, which is going to be Unleash Chaos.
I knew you were going to pick Unleash Chaos.
I mean, from all the description of Sebastian Crowe, Unleash Chaos lets me make a spellcast roll against a target within far range and spend any number of tokens to channel raw energy from within myself to unleash against them. On a successful roll, I get to use a number of d10s equal to the tokens I spent and deal that much damage to the target. I mark a stress to replenish this card with tokens, so we're just accumulating more stress. The amount of tokens I have is equal to, I believe, my instinct.
So 2 to start, but as you level up, this actually will scale as you level up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to make me want to focus on instinct. But come on, Unleashing Chaos is so Sebastian Crowe.
Yeah.
The second ability, so this one I'm leaning a little bit more into the mechanical side of things. The number one spell that I used when I was an early D&D character with Sebastian Crowe was Shield.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Rune Ward. Rune Ward lets me tap into my personal trinkets. So this manifests from his goggles, and I can use it, or I can even give it to an ally. So if an ally wants to put my goggles on and have a Rune Ward, they can do that. The ward's holder can spend a hope to reduce incoming damage by 1d8. If the ward die result is 8, the ward's power ends after it reduces the damage that turn, and it can be recharged for free on the next rest.
Okay, so that actually is reducing damage.
Yes.
So does still feel like shield, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that it ties to his personal item. It makes those goggles, maybe he's imbued them with magic over the years because they're personal to him. So there you go. We have Unleash Chaos and Rune Ward for my first level features.
As you level up, you will get more domain cards. You basically get to choose a new card every time you level up. You can have a maximum of 5 active cards at once. Once you get more than 5 domain cards, you have to vault the other cards, but you can switch them out when you rest. Daggerheart actually also incorporates a really cool thing that we actually were already using in our games before Daggerheart came out, which was creating connections between characters. So it actually prompts you to make a bond between you and the other player characters, which it is 3 questions. So I think we'll give 1 question to Veo, 1 question to Paluto, maybe another to an NPC.
Yeah, I think that that works. And, this is something that we established even in our session zeros in D&D, but it's nice to actually see it baked into the character creation. So let's take a look at these questions and find out who I would give to who. So the first question it asks, and I'm supposed to, I guess, pose this to one of my fellow players and they would answer, why do you trust me so deeply? I think that's a good question for Joe's character, Pluto. We were very close friends at the outset of the campaign, but we had actually just met. So what made that bond work? I can imagine that we would discuss Joe and my initial connection, which was me rescuing him from the sewers of Drakkenheim after his entire squad was eaten by rats. I feel like that would earn us some trust, so I imagine we could elaborate on that. So the second question, what did I do that makes you cautious around me? That one might be for Veo. This is a bit of an interesting one. I'm going to stretch the backstory a little bit. Veo and Sebastian were childhood friends, and they got into a lot of mischief together. But then when I was scooped up by the academy, I didn't have time to say goodbye to Veo, so I kind of just vanished from her life.
Yeah.
And that might actually make her cautious when, years later, Sebastian Crowe comes walking into town again with academy rings, and he's like a fully grown guy
Yeah.
now. And she might be like, okay, we used to be childhood friends, but who are you now?
And what about the last one?
The last one, why do we keep our shared past a secret? So, okay, if we're looking at NPCs,
Sebastian had a really strong connection with River at the start of the original campaign.
yeah.
Who was another academy mage.
So the idea was that River and Sebastian were actually school friends. And yeah, okay, so why do we keep our shared past a secret? We don't talk a lot about that, and this is actually maybe a bit of a sad point for Sebastian. This is interesting because we didn't really explore this much, but Sebastian and River were very, very close at the start of school. They were both naturally gifted at magic, and they were both children of prominent sorcerers. But as they started to go through school, River was very academic and astute and straight A student.
Yeah.
Where Sebastian was more raw power who he had trouble controlling it, and eventually he gets expelled for overusing it. They maintained a friendship, but River, he kind of started to keep Sebastian at arm's length to maintain a professional identity and not be associated with, the wrecking ball
Yes.
that is Sebastian Crowe.
Oh, that's sad.
That is sad.
These are really good prompts. I really like that these are baked into the character creation process, and I think that's a big thing to emphasize for Daggerheart specifically, because I think these are cool questions to get you thinking about your interactions with the other player characters, potentially even other NPCs.
Yeah, I actually, I actually feel if we had had that question, we might have had more exploration of River and Sebastian's.
And I think even the one with Veo, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those would have been...
Darn.
Yeah. So that's what Sebastian looks like at level 1 in Daggerheart. But let's level Sebastian up a bit. He was a veteran adventurer, and I want to kind of look at some of the other domain powers and things. So leveling up in Daggerheart's kind of interesting because you basically get these advancements that you can freely choose from. Every time you level up, you get to pick a new domain card, and there's a new level of domain cards that open up every level. And you also get to pick 2 advancements. So these can be things that let you boost your traits, boost your experiences, or unlock additional powers for your character, or do things like increase your evasion, your stress, your hit points. So your hit points don't increase in Daggerheart unless you choose the advancement to increase them. So characters actually stay pretty vulnerable through most of their career, but their damage thresholds do go up. And then also when you level up, you may also get extra, an increase to your proficiency, which is basically your baseline damage goes up, and you may get extra experiences.
So let's move to level 2. The first thing that we're going to do right away is I get to create a new experience. I already know what I want this one to be. So Sebastian was shadow touched. He was in tune with the Shadowlands. And even though that came from my idea prompted by him being a shadow sorcerer, but we can easily make that an experience of his so that if we're playing in a Drakkenheim setting and anything involving the Shadowlands or death or that sort of thing comes up, he can be more knowledgeable or in tune with that element. It might come up less than the other two, but I think it's an important part of his backstory.
I think the Expelled Academy Mage one is going to be one that you're going to fall back on a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And what's the worst that can happen? Just plays right into my gameplay style. But Shadow Touched for those key moments could give me an advantage.
Yeah.
Next, increased proficiency. That's just going to happen automatically, so I'm going to be better with my weapons. When we look at the level up options, I think the best thing that I can do here is I'm going to increase my traits, which immediately is going to let me up my instinct by 1, and I'm going to up my presence by 1.
Nice.
That's going to help out in a lot of regards. The second thing I'm going to choose, so listen, we've clearly gone on a theme here of Sebastian Crowe blowing through his stress to use his power, so I actually think it's important right away that I gain an extra stress slot. I think that that's just going to help me alleviate the fact that I might burn myself out a lot.
Yeah.
Then I get to choose a new domain card. So let's see what the level 2 options are. Okay, looking at them, it's interesting that we're going very Arcana focused at the start here, but we might get more shadowy focused as he taps deeper into his power. But listen, I said he was a combination of fire and shadow, and the first things that Sebastian Crowe did near the beginning of the campaign was set a lot of things on fire. So I think I got to go with Cinder Grasp here, which Cinder Grasp, I get to make a spellcasting roll against a target within melee range, and on a success, the target instantly bursts into flames, takes 1d20 plus 3 magic damage, and is temporarily lit on fire. When a creature acts while on fire, they must take an extra 2d6 magic damage if they are still on fire at the end of their action. So we're picking that. We're going to set people on fire. That's level 2.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to level 3.
So at level 3, it's just going to be the standard level up options and the choose domain deck cards. So for the level up option for level 3, we're going to, I think, increase experiences.
You can only do this once per tier, and it's important to note that you can only increase your trait. You can increase your traits multiple times, but you can only increase a given trait once per tier. So you've already boosted up your primary traits, so that's why we're not choosing that one again.
Yeah. And so I'm going to, like we said, Shadow Touched might come up a little less, but I think Academy Dropout and What's the Worst That Could Happen are both going to come up pretty regularly, so I'm actually going to boost both of them, so they're now +3 if I invoke them. My other level up option, let's gain some more HP. Feels important. And then we get to choose a domain card. So now we have access to the level 3 features, which for a sorcerer are going to be Chokehold, Counterspell, Flight, Veil of Night, and yeah, those are the level 3 options. Again, early levels, I played a lot with the Darkness spell.
Yeah.
So I think Veil of Night is actually going to get me this sort of shadow. So now we've kind of combined by level 3. We have the fire, we have the shadow, we have the shield, we have the chaotic magic. I think that we're really kind of actually nailing Sebastian's vibes here.
Totally. So level 4, what are we going to do here?
Level 4, again, we have the level up options. I've already picked increase experience. I could increase traits again, but they would have to be different traits.
Yeah, so like you could increase like your knowledge and finesse, or your knowledge and
I'm not really
strength
here to do that. I don't know. I think I'm focusing on my instincts and my presence. So at level 4, I'm going to increase my evasion. Might as well make me a little bit better at dodging or preventing.
Yeah.
And that way we've kind of also evened it out. Through these 4 levels, we've picked a little bit of an increase in all of the categories.
Defensive categories, yeah.
And you know,
you could have not increased any of those. That's the interesting thing about Daggerheart, is that you could actually decide to just never increase your hit points or your stress or your evasion and just
deal with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I want to like just we might start pushing in a certain direction the further we go. But I think right now I just want him to be a bit well-rounded. I think I am going to choose the extra domain card though here at 4th level, because why not gain more powers? So at 4th level we have Blink Out, Glyph of Nightfall, Preservation Blast, Stealth Expertise. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Blink Out.
Yeah, this is a teleport, right?
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
can teleport.
that was a big thing. You did that so much with Sebastian in the original campaign.
Yeah, it kind of became his third pillar, which I wasn't expecting. When I started, I was all fire, all shadow. But as the game progressed, I tapped much more into, I found battlefield control and like spatial
Yeah.
sort of spells.
And then what are you going to choose? You're going to get an extra domain power at this level. What is that going to be as well?
I think even though we have access to the 4th level features, I'm missing taking Counterspell, which just feels so
It felt
important.
very Sebastian. I feel like it's starting to feel very much like the essence of Sebastian is starting to come to life now, because we've got the teleportation, we've got the counterspelling, we've got setting things on fire, we've got unleashing chaos. Like, all the things that were really important to his character are now like fully here.
Yeah. And, at this point, we're nearing about the halfway mark of the campaign.
Yeah.
We're going to, for the purposes of this video, let's do one more level. Let's bring them up to 5. So
this is actually the next tier as well. This is tier 3.
yeah.
So we're going to create another experience and raise our proficiency because we're entering a new tier. And we now have the ability to actually increase our traits further, which we didn't before.
Yeah. So let's start with the experience. Now, we're talking about halfway through the campaign. We're gonna judge some storytelling here.
Okay.
And spoilers for Drakkenheim, not major spoilers. Just bear with us. I think what his experience would be here is he spent a lot of time in the city of Drakkenheim. He has touched the heart of Delirium.
Yes, because you did mount an expedition to the crater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do remember in the show, at least, that was a pivotal moment that actually changed Sebastian Crowe's entire outlook on the campaign.
What about Flame be with you?
Okay. that would also be really good, but I mean, that's just a mean one. I only used that line twice.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm thinking of like storytelling wise, so if I write in touched Delirium Heart, I think what this gives me, again, we are talking about a Drakkenheim campaign.
Yeah.
This gives me the ability to add 2 to any rolls where I'm like looking at delirium or studying the haze, anything to do with contamination, mutations, the
I
haze.
would also allow it for like roles to like convince other people about like the truth of delirium.
Right. So that actually feels like a very well-rounded option that I can use in a lot of different places. So we're going to put that as his new experience. Again, my proficiency increases because we've reached a new tier. And because we're reaching a new tier, I think that we increase those traits again.
Yeah.
So I'm focused here. I'm going to go on Instinct and Presence.
So what does that put them up to?
Instinct is now at a +4, and Presence is at a +3.
Nice.
I'm going to be relying on these for a lot of my roles. I'm not going to be very good at other things, but, maybe if I invoke my my experiences, I can be okay. And I think, so also as we move into this tier, this is where you have a few unique options, because we can either upgrade our subclass to gain another subclass feature, or we can also choose to multi-class at this point. Now, Sebastian Crowe eventually multi-classed, but I felt like that was very late game.
Yeah.
So I think right now, upgrading my subclass is the right choice.
So that actually is then fixed for you. So that gives you the Primal Origin Enchanted Aid power, which lets you enchant the magic of others with your essence. And when you help an ally with a spellcast roll, you can roll a d8 as your advantage die. And after the ally has made a roll, you can swap the roll results with their duality die. So like give them hope or fear, I think, as well. So that's actually really cool. It gives you a way of like helping your allies out.
Yeah, which Sebastian had to learn to do that eventually.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So we have our leveled up subclass, and then again we get to choose now a 5th level domain deck. And I think, okay, our options are Chain Lightning, Hush, Phantom Retreat, and Premonition. There's a lot of really good ones here that actually speak to Sebastian Crowe, but I think one of his iconic features was that he talked to his mother and got insight from beyond the grave. And although it's an Arcana feature, I still think this is tapping into like his shadowy origins and all of that. So I'm going to go with Premonition, which to me mimics the sort of idea that if I were role-playing this out, it would be that conversations with his mom beyond the grave grant him premonitions.
This is actually a crazy ability. Once per long rest, immediately after the GM conveys the consequence of a roll you made, you can rescind the move and consequences like they never happened and do something else instead.
Yeah.
So just like basically, if Sebastian, it's like Sebastian is messed up so much that he like sees the mess up and messes up in a different way.
Yeah, this is very like Sands of Time, Prince of
Yeah.
Persia vibe, where it's like, oh, died, and then you just rewind, and you're like, nope, got it. So yeah, I think that actually does speak to elements of Sebastian Crowe, and there we have it. We are at 5th level.
That's cool. I am kind of blown away at how well Sebastian Crowe works in Daggerheart.
You know, this is an interesting thing, and I think that maybe we should do, take a look at Pluto and Veo. We'll get Joe and Jill in here if we can to try that out and see if the same thing happens with them. But it's really interesting to me how, if you know the essence of a character, if you've been playing D&D for a while and your table is converting over to Daggerheart, you can really still capture the essence. No, my abilities are not the same, but I'm actually really happy with what I got here for a Daggerheart character. I think the system is really clean and great, and I have all of the things that feel like they make Sebastian Crowe Sebastian Crowe.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this really illuminates for me as part of the process is that and one of the things that makes me excited about Daggerheart as a system is that there's a fair amount of crunch here. Like, we didn't really do the min-max thing where like we went over every single domain power and like was like, what is the most powerful of these ones? We were more guided on like what was best for the character. And that felt like a very natural process to go through, right? Because the numbers kind of were easy. Right? You didn't really have to worry. I feel like as long as you're increasing your key traits every time you get the chance to do so in Daggerheart, you can't really mess your character up.
You might want to increase some of your weaker traits to make your character better at those types of roles. I also think, it can seem like a lot at first that you have HP, you have stress, you have hope, you're giving fear, you have minor damage, major damage, severe damage, you have your, like all sorts of things to keep track of. But it actually, again, in playing, feels very natural to do these things. And I I just think that, I don't know, I love what we've come up with here and how many of my abilities are like mark off stress, push Sebastian Crowe to the limit and gain stress.
I think maybe you should have taken that second stress instead of the extra hit point. I feel like you're going to get yourself in trouble if you a lot.
Well, I mean, if I overdo my stress, I knock into my hit points. So really, at the end of the day, I can be just max stressed out. And but no, it is really interesting how this all plays out. And I think looking at the character again, if we look at my character sheet here, my evasion now up to 12, still have my 3 armor slots. I now have a +4 instinct, +3 presence. I have a bunch of experiences that I can pull on that are either granting me a +2 or a +3. And, we can actually swap out. So right now, what would I have at 5th level? I might actually drop, no, I like Unleash Chaos. I might drop Rune Ward in place for Premonition.
Mm.
Although Rune Ward is always useful. I don't know, it's tough. I would have to actually play with this character for a bit and see which ones are coming
And
up.
the nice thing is that when you rest, you can change things out. So like every character gets a little bit of that like wizardy thing where like you can switch out your powers as needed. You just choose your active loadout of 5 powers.
Yeah.
I think I also think that the rerolls that you get with a character, like being able to reroll when your experiences are involved and reroll on reaction rolls by marking more stress. I don't know.
I'm gonna make bad choices and overuse that, and I'm gonna kill Sebastian Crowe as many times as he died in Drakkenheim. So
so much fun.
So nothing's changed. I'm still gonna be a chaotic, stressed, over-the-top magic user who burns things, teleports, uses shadows, talks to his mom, has goggles, and is just constantly causing absolute shenanigans at the table.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So yeah, that is us rebuilding Sebastian Crowe in Daggerheart. Of course, we are doing this because we are converting the entire Drakkenheim campaign over to Daggerheart in our new Kickstarter project, which launches today. So the links for that are right down below if you want to find out more about what we're doing for that project and what that's going to look like. But in brief, we're taking the entirety of the original Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign that we published several years ago for 5e and repackaging that for Daggerheart. We're working with Darrington Press and Ghostfire Gaming to make that happen. We're collaborating with the amazing Mike Underwood to help us with all the mechanics of Daggerheart. He's doing some really amazing work with that too. And so if this was exciting to you, if you're like, wow, Sebastian Crowe sounds really cool, this Daggerheart game sounds really cool, follow the links down below and you can find out more about the whole campaign.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more Daggerheart content, we are still going to be covering D&D on this channel, don't worry. We're just pretty excited about Daggerheart right now, and we wanted to do a few videos just to showcase a few of the things that we really love about it. If you want to see some more Daggerheart content, let us know what you're looking for in the comments below, and we'll try to dabble a little bit in this new system that we're very excited about.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.